Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and can we just chill a little bit today? Like, can we just be a little, can we just chill out today? You know? So tomorrow I want to maybe, one of the things I've been thinking about is that I want to do a follow-up to my previous video about like why you should get into EVE Online, to be like a basic, you know, my advice for a new player in the game, as concise as possible, but didn't have it ready for today. I've had a lot of stuff going on. I feel like today is just a good day to go back into the back line and hack some cans. I've actually already done some of that today. It went pretty well. But I figured that this would just be a good time for us to chill out and chat for a little bit, maybe catch up. I did want to show, I may not have done this already, or I might have. I did want to show kind of what I have going on with my overview. Maybe do some more work on it. Yeah, have a good night, Hobby Pinas? Pinas? Does that mean you're leaving? We just started. Chill in glorious depth of field blur. Exactly. Yeah, it's true. All right, so this is probably a better version. As we've seen before, what I've done is I have split my overview into 3. So if you go into your escape menu, you may have to do this. Go to feature previews and then set multiple overviews and turn it on. This is fantastic. So I still have been having to do some cleanup, and I haven't quite figured out all of the target pages that I want to have yet, but I think this is starting to settle in. But so on this side at the top left, I have my beacons. Beacons are really important for exploration. It's really important for combat sites, like faction warfare. It's really important for events. So I have one thing that just keeps track of beacons. I think Sinos also go there when they light. Basically bring my attention to immediate points of interest. Below that is my normal navigation window. So this is like all of the gates, all of the structures, all of the planets, and that keeps all of those things off of the other overviews, which is kind of nice. And then over here on the top right, somewhat obscured by chat, but over here on the right, we have the actual combat tag itself. Now, there's a couple of things that I like about this. First of all, it allows me to compartmentalize information on the screen. Hold on a second. That makes me look like I'm like way down low. All right, so it allows me to compartmentalize stuff. Navigation stuff is on the left because that's already where my route is and all that sort of stuff. I do run into some problems sometimes when this left side extends down too far, but I work through it. With targeting and stuff on the right, because like if I target something, it actually goes here too. So, and this goes vertical. So my targets go up and down on the left or on the right hand side along with the targets and local. So this is like my immediate tactical information. And then on the left hand side is my navigation. And then I have my probe scanner, my directional scanner as one box. Beyond that, I just have, oh, that actually reminds me, I need to go and take these and go change it to enable always above full screen and enable always above full screen. So that way now if I hit F10, those windows all stay up even when I enter into my map. So now I can be checking the map. I can be making navigational choices as an explorer, you know, whatever. Just hit F10 in and out. I like this a lot better than the map being a separate window because if it's a separate window, you actually have to find a place for it and close it and reopen it and stuff like that. And it can go over things and things can go over it. But with this setup at the top, or full screen, now I have the map. It goes away completely and it comes completely, and I haven't lost any combat awareness. All right. So I'm going to head out. I think. Hold on. Let me double check. Yes. What's up, Mad Hatter? I have an edited version of my video from the You Should Play Eve video. I managed to get it from a half an hour or an hour and a half to just over an hour. So I cut out a lot of little tiny bits, just a few seconds at a time, ums and stuff. Doing the whole YouTube choppy chop jump cut thing. I don't know. I'm still getting used to it. I probably will make it go live today. I've been considering doing another pass on it, but if you're interested, DM me and I'll send you a link to it. Unless you're a supporter, in which case I think I've already linked it in the supporter channel. Oh yeah, I forgot to double check. Because I was like, I'm going to have a chill day. And I'm like, watch. Nope. I was like, watch, they're going to drop something on Hobo Leaks right before I go live. Nope. Things are quiet right now. Yep. The latest news is still the Intaki gate being turned on. Oh, hi. Don't mind me. Just scooting on by. Oh, shh. Yeah, earlier today I went out and I found several Kaldar. I actually got really lucky, of course, since I wasn't streaming it. And managed to get several outposts and got, I think, 6 splices and 4 decoders. Or, yeah. Pilgrim. Oh wow, this system is under pretty significant threat. But if Pine falls, that does nothing. The only thing that does is it makes Hiri into a command post. Oh no, Rakapas too. Because it doesn't affect any of our front line, it just affects Pine. Interesting. Oh. Do we want to stay on this view or do we want to go back to the other view? Which one do we want? Do we want this one? Or do we want this one? A or B? If I was smart, we would do like a poll or something. Oh, man. Oh, I kind of want them to engage me right there. Oh, God, I don't want them to engage me right here. Oh. See? Well, okay then. Is that I shut down the stream and head out? Have a good night, everybody. Bye. Epi said, see you later. Ha. Look, if you guys have a problem with dad jokes, you are in the wrong place. B? Well, since you're the only one to give a real feedback, Malcolm, we'll go with that for now. You like seeing more info? Let me just double check to make sure you're not hunting me down right now. This is also... Man, our front lines are in a bad shape right now. Oh, there's a battlefield. It's all right, Gallon. It's fine. I didn't mean to say that like in a bad way. I was just like, well, right now there's one vote, so he has 100% of the vote, so he gets his way. All right, sounds good. Well, I mean, if you see, like with A, I did change it up. I've changed it to the Galente mint green. This is the view that I normally use for like reporting. There was a vague vote of A or B. Again, we're very chill today, so it wasn't like the closest thing to a poll we got was me mentioning offhandedly that maybe it should have been a poll. But now you're 2 votes down against A, so you're on Mars space stuck in Bastion doing level 4s. Fair enough. All right, here we are, rear guard at last. I'm going to start out with just a relatively broad. I don't actually care if I get all of them in good hits. In fact, if I get rings and echoes, that's a good thing right now. But I didn't. So I go for the top one. Just pick one. Zero it in. Double click in space. Zero it in. Pop it down 2 notches. And search. It's a wormhole. I don't need a wormhole. What? I mean, no, not totally. No, no, no. I'm just tired. I didn't get my Adderall. So I'll tell you the honest truth, okay? I ran out of my Adderall yesterday, and today was my appointment to talk to the guy, my prescriber. So I don't get more until tomorrow. So today's a chill day. That's pretty much. I could either panic and sweat it and force my way through it, or I could just chill. All right. So I opted for the latter. Hey, what's up, YellowCladKing? I mean, beyond that, like I said, the last stream was very much on topic most of the time. Maybe tomorrow, if it goes planned, will also be a big topic. So having a day to just kind of hang out seemed good enough. Ah, Edencom fortresses. I hate those. Trying to decide what I wanted to do with those gun starts on grid. Someone's going to bed early. We'll see about that. That's the actual thing about it, right? Is that like I can be worn out all day and then by the evening, like pick up so then I can't go to bed. Because it's not tired in the classic sense. It's more like uh it's hard to make right now the time in which you do the thing. Right? It's easy to let things just kind of slip away. Because ADHD is an executive function disorder. So even if you want to do a thing, even if you know you're going to do a thing, uh, or you should do a thing, you don't. Even to the point of like focusing more on how much you should be doing the thing than actually doing the thing itself, which sucks. So I caught myself kind of getting into that pattern of like wanting to make something available for today and needing to do that, but then also letting things slip by because I also had to be ready for my appointments and stuff. So in the end, I had to come to you guys with very little to show for it. But at the same time, I also really like hanging out with everybody, and I know that you guys like hanging out too. So here we are. No, mental fatigue is the wrong word. It's more like I said, it's failure of motivation is the wrong word. Like I said, it's an executive function disorder. So the best way that I can put it is you get into a trap where right now is never the time to get started. Right? Like you know you need to get something done today. It's a kind of like if you've ever procrastinated on your homework or something like that. It's like that where like, oh, I know I need to get it done at some point today, but I've already put it off so long. Like I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to get it started right now. So I'm just going to sit here and dwell about how screwed I am if I don't do it. Lack of discipline? No, it's a so basically with ADHD people, most of the time it's a low dopamine in the frontal cortex. This is why Adderall works. It's because Adderall and other stimulants or whatever that they use are either reuptake inhibitors or stimulators of extra dopamine production. So, like, effectively, my brain's reward center for doing something is broken. So unless something is a dopamine stimulator, like say a video game, uh, it's difficult for me. The description I've heard some ADHD people say is it's like watching TV, but you don't have control of the remote. Even when I take Adderall, it can be, I don't always get to choose what it is that I hyperfixate on during those times. I just get to choose. I choose whether or not I get to focus or not necessarily what I get to focus on. I mean, it's not always terrible or anything like that. Like I went most of my life without treating it at all, but it is what it is. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm drinking coffee, but again, it's not about being awake. Coffee will just make you jittery, and in fact, can even frazzle your brain and cause time to slip by faster. And the streamer said, "Let it be chill," and it was chill. And I'm not saying this to like get sympathy or as an excuse. It's just so like one of the things that bothered me, I didn't actually come to terms with being ADHD until 2019. And I was diagnosed when I was in the 4th grade. So I was treated with like tons of Ritalin when I was a kid. Um, but when I ended up leaving, running away from home more or less, and living with friends at 16. And like my mom used ADHD to control me, so I didn't believe in it. So I rejected it and stopped taking medication completely and moved on with my life. But the problem is that every single time you see somebody talking about ADHD or like read anything about ADHD, when we see something about depression, it'll be like, are you experiencing these things? Do you feel like the energy in your life has gone away? Have you been sad or lacking in emotion in the last 6 months, for the last several months or whatever? Like these sorts of things from like an internal perspective, the thing that the person with depression would experience for self-identification. But when we talk about ADHD, we talk about it in the terms of, does your child do this? Does the student do these things? Does your spouse do this? It's always from the perspective of the person dealing with the ADHD, not the internal experience of it itself. Therefore, I never accepted that I had it. I accepted that I was sometimes thoughtless, that I was, socially awkward, that I easily overlooked things. I got into my own head, these kinds of things, right? Like, but things like the military taught me the consequences of getting it wrong. And so I learned to be afraid of those consequences and do my damnedest to get it right. And then it wasn't until I watched a thing about a kid on VR chat being talking about his experience of being bullied and why he doesn't go to public school anymore. And like one of the top comments was, "This kid sounds like he's got rejection sensitivity dysphoria. This is a common symptom of ADHD." Now, I will say that rejection sensitivity dysphoria and its relationship with ADHD in reality is a bit more complicated than that. But at the time, like I really resonated with what the kid was saying, and so then I went to the ADHD subreddit and I started reading the stories of the people with ADHD. And like my first thought was, oh my God, I found my tribe. And my second thought was, fuck, because, you know, the consequences of what that meant, the thing that I'd been rejecting for years of my life, I had to come to face with. So that's why I like to talk about it, is because I feel like we don't talk enough about it, A, from an adult perspective, but B, from an internal perspective. Why do the people with ADHD do the things that they do? Because it's really easy to take those behaviors and just say like, okay, well, they're lazy or they don't care or, you know, whatever. But it's often not that. I've had a night where I was hungry and I made the toast. I can't even remember how far into it I got. But it just sat there and I even stared at it, but I couldn't actually eat it, and just sat there all night. Right. Yeah. That's what rejection. And like I said, it is a bit more complicated. Oh God. Well, I'm gonna leave now. Oh no! Look at all the. Oh my God! It's a Blops drop a clock. I should go back and check it out. Oh man. Oh no. Hopefully this doesn't get me killed. No. So, so the reason why I said that the relationship is complicated is because some people say that it is a symptom of ADHD, but it's not actually in the DSM-4 for ADHD, so it's not technically a symptom of it, and the relationship is dubious. My personal belief is that basically ADHD people have a tendency to be kind of fuck ups a lot of the time, at least in under pressure situations, and so are used to speaking out of line or being too talkative or not being welcome or being too forward or, you know, being clumsy, and therefore they tend to be judged a lot more than other kids. And that's what leads to the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, because you're so used to being rejected and have so many painful memories associated with it that even the slightest hint of rejection, like, triggers you to feel like it's a worst case scenario. Does that make sense? What's up, free? What's up, Boo? Yeah. Free content. Sorry, was I bringing everybody down? I just felt like it was an interesting topic. Who are these people? Dark Dream Raiders? Parabellum? Is this just like Bomber's Bar or something? Like, what's going on? I don't even know. Either way, this is not a root guard. Can you ask in local what's going on? I don't know if they would, Pandemic Horde? Black Flag? There is some Black Flag in there. Oh yeah, there's quite a bit of Black Flag in the GFs. You're good, man. Yeah, I mean, right. Yeah, exactly. I agree. You know, I talk about it because I would like other people to I would like people to talk about it. Therefore, I do. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Oh, good. Diana Kim. My favorite. Oh, this is a front line. What the hell am I even doing? Hey. Can you tell Diana Kim's soul says hi? All right. Just in time to jump out, too, which is perfect. Bye. Oh, I see. So I should go Marto and then probably Kanaka. Yeah, I should make that little loop. Yeah, it does look like I might be going to go rob some faction warfare data sites. That is true. I just felt like bringing some last minute holiday cheer to the good boys and girls of the Caldari rearguard. No problem, Solstice. I don't know all about that, Epi. Unfortunate. Hmm. I'm the only Galente that you like. There's plenty of good Galente guys. Most of them aren't Aderon or hungry, but you know, I'm kidding. There's lots of there's lots of good like Galente is actually really the idea that Galente has a lot of the more experienced pilots has really been showing itself. This has actually historically been true because of the nature of Jita, is that like the Caldari always are most numerous, but the Galente are filled more with like pirates or pilots that are there to fight for fighting's sake. Name one. Nyx is a good dude. Spoons is pretty good. Spoons is a solid dude. All right. Oh, data. I do like me some data. Exactly. What is it? Aika Warazu. I think that's it. You've never told me I'm wrong yet, so. I'm also surprised that you didn't go for the easy answer that I'm not Galente but Triglavian. Man, the timeline would have been different if Fleet had been allowed to go into play. No. Lame. Whatever, man. I'll just hack this one. I am, by the way, demonstrating how not to hack in a couple of key ways. Just in case you wanted to call me out or something. Just know I'm aware. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I could maybe clean up that, but it's just a kind of a darker corner of my green screen. You know, given the fact that I pronounce it right, I should probably just keep on trying to pronounce it the way it is rather than trying to remember it a different way. Even if it's shorter. Besides, there's just a small piece of you that relishes in delight that I stumble through it, I'm sure. That's why Dajat Lemmont supports the stream. Yay, data site. Might be interesting. Although with it being this hard to scan down, might be like a sleeper cache or something. Yep, there it is, sleeper cache. Now, I don't remember which half of the ring this is on, but I'm actually going to go with this half because I mostly was scanning from the other side. It means same as ever. Eh. As in, how are you? Same as ever. My response to somebody saying that is, that bad, huh? Speaking of all this coffee, I'm probably going to need to go to the bathroom after this system is over. just being real. Which is now. So let me get to a safe, and then I will. Came here from Reddit to watch your faction warfare video, but turns out you're live. Hope you're doing well today. Hey, man. Good to see you. Yeah, we're just doing some scanning. Make your bladder again. I am about to go to the bathroom, yes. All right. I will... I used to have a be right back video screen, but apparently that didn't make it past the conversion. So let's see if I can find something that works. I know what I'll do. We'll do the latest scope video. And boom. Be right back. By the way, when I did my last recording, people didn't point out to me, or at least I didn't see people pointing. I'll talk about it when I get back, actually.
The Kaldari Navy has deployed significant fleets into the long-disputed system of Athenon in the Placid region. The few Gallente Federation scouting elements in the system are being overwhelmed by vastly superior Kaldari forces. This move by the Kaldari Navy to further secure strategic objectives in Athenon is seen as a direct response to the Federation's dramatic and massive 8th of November invasion of Intaki and neighboring systems in the disputed region. President Selis Agard has claimed the massive invasion was necessary for the security and liberation of the home system of the Intaki, a founding nation of the Gallente Federation. Chairman Akimaka Saraki of the Kaldari Chief Executive Panel branded the Gallente invasion outrageous, and the CEP swiftly authorized the response of deploying a major Kaldari fleet into occupied Athenon. The Athenon system has seen much conflict in the months since the discovery of a secret Edencom station orbiting over a Triglavian research facility on the surface of the 5th planet. Under orders from Executive General Heika Torrigo, Capsuleer militia fighters acting on behalf of the Kaldari state have managed to maintain their control of Athenon and the wider Surthold constellation for months. During this time, the Kaldari have constructed a new Stargate into the system and completed initial recovery and research of Triglavian technology. The increased Kaldari Navy presence in the system has foreclosed Gallente efforts to construct their own Stargate and further curtailed the operational freedom of Federation forces. The race to acquire Triglavian technology located in relay sites scattered across Athenon and surrounding systems has been brought to an end by Kaldari Navy firepower. This Kaldari state counterpunch leaves their scientists and technical experts with a major, perhaps decisive advantage in researching this Triglavian technology. Although the Kaldari state has swiftly demonstrated its willingness to act in response to the Federation's invasion of Intaki, few believe this will be the sole extent of Kaldari action. The Kaldari Navy continues to be on high alert, with a large number of ships shifting back to staging positions after initially following a counter-invasion plan aimed at protecting the core of state territory. Many continue to ask if the Caldari intend to further confront the Gallente in the Placid region, and perhaps even in Taki itself, or if the dispute can possibly be resolved without escalation to full-scale interstellar war. In Turner, the effects of the extreme stellar event that disrupted its star are still being felt throughout the system. The planet of Turner 1 and its orbiting station took very significant damage, with the planet being blasted to a scorched remnant and all life extinguished. In the event's aftermath, high levels of unstable wormhole activity have emerged across the star system. Scientists believe this activity is likely to continue as a permanent consequence of the catastrophic failure of the Amar Empire's prototype stellar transmuter experiment. In light of the devastation seen in Turner, the Minmatar Republic's Tribal Council have authorized shutdown procedures to begin at the 2 remaining stellar transmuters controlled by Minmatar forces in the systems of Egmar and Vard. The prototype transmuters were originally deployed by the Imperial Navy in Amar-occupied Minmatar systems. Evidently, this was done with the purpose of testing reverse-engineered Triglavian technology. The Amar Empire has claimed to have gained enough knowledge from its experiments to move to the next stage of technological development. In a rolling offensive over the last 2 months, Capsuleers loyal to the Minmatar Republic managed to recapture Vard and Egmar, enabling the Republic fleet to seize the transmuters. With further militia assistance, the Minmatar have rapidly caught up to the Amar and acquired sufficient research data to complete their own initial stage of development. Together with additional observations made of the Turner catastrophe and the crucial data gained by Minmatar Capsuleer efforts, the Republic believes its control of the transmuters is such that it can safely power down their operations. Having completed their research, the Minmatar clearly intend to reap its benefits while preventing further stellar catastrophes. This is Alton Hovery, reporting for The Scope.
So, something I wanted to talk about, actually. That's something that reminded me about real quick. So, one of the things that scope video reminded me is that I see a lot of people talking about how the faction campaign didn't allow it, like, we didn't actually have a real impact, or minimizing our impact. You know, given the fact that like, obviously we controlled whether or not the Stargate got built. But run an ad. But we also, like, how much did our choices, or how that played out, impact whether or not Celis Agard invaded Intaki, whether or not what the Caldari did in consequence, and the subsequent takeover of Syndicate region, etc., etc. And then on the Turner side, is the result of Turner because of what happened, right? It seems very possible that Turner exploded because it was supposed to be being dialed in with the other two, but when they initiated the shutdown on the other two, they made it so that the Turner one destabilized and the other two safely shut down, right? So, like, if the Minmatar had not captured Turner and Vard, had those 3 systems been tied together like a mini Pokvin, like it kind of suggested that they might have been working towards, not in the scope video, but in the world news about it. So, like, I still don't know whether or not we will ever know. Like, I'd love it if CCP let us know. But, like, for instance, in the scope video, it says that there was ships being prepared for a counterattack, counter invasion, but that they were being pulled back. I wonder if the Gallente had been more successful in taking Othanoon or constructing their own Stargate, if the Caldari would have had a more aggressive response. Because it seems to suggest that the Caldari were ready to do something more, but then decided not to because of the way things played out. But even more broadly and less about speculation, more tangible, people have been acting like this is impossible, that like the idea that CCP would have the story be impacted by us in a critical way, or that it's unrealistic to do it, or like, well, the CCP is just making the features or whatever. I feel like this misses a couple of points. One, most of the time features are a technology more than the complete branded package, right? Like, you could theoretically take all of the mechanics that made the formation of Pochfin what it was and do it somewhere else. It didn't have to be Pochfin per se. Really what they're doing is they're modifying the state of the systems, they're making new stargates, and they've even demonstrated the ability to do that on the fly to some extent. So the idea that like Pochfin, like if we had stopped Pochfin, if they would have forced it, I think is kind of nonsense, because ultimately if the story didn't lead to Pochfin, then there wasn't necessarily a reason to make it. But in this case, it's even more simple in the idea that like there was an opportunity for the systems to be stitched together in Turner, but it wouldn't be the end of the universe if they were, and it wouldn't be the end of the universe if they weren't. So instead they just did this, showing off like other status effects that they could do with the way that Turner now works and some other things, right? Like, but ultimately the other big key is the fact that this isn't that unreasonable, right? This isn't like there's infinite possibilities. There is, on one side, the Caldari wins and the Gallente wins. The Caldari wins and the Gallente loses. The Caldari loses and the Gallente wins. And the Caldari loses and the Gallente loses. So there's only like 4 possibilities based on the event of outcomes that they would have to account for. It is not hard as a storyteller to sit down and be like, okay, well, if the Caldari win but the Gallente lose, then this is what's going to happen. But, you know, otherwise this is what's going to happen, right? They could know. It could be very easy to be like, well, if the Amar managed to maintain all 3 of the Stargates and managed to complete their research task, then they get their special Pochfin. If the Mimitar managed to capture one or more of the Stargates, then the remaining ones under Amar control instead blow up. Right? Like, that's fine. That's totally understandable. So it's not that hard to build a branching narrative like this, because here's the other key. Sorry, here's the third piece of the key. You might be like, well, but they are already planning the next thing. And while to a certain extent they kind of know where their path is going, I mean, it is an agile development company. You know, like they don't really know exactly what the next step is. Like when the lore writers are opportunists, right? Like they don't get to decide what is happening most of the time. They get to figure out how what is happening can be done from the context of the universe. Like, where does it fit, as it were? So, you know, that's one of the reasons why we have storylines that lay fallow for a little while, because if nothing touches on it, if there's no features, if nobody has any ideas of what to do with it mechanically, then it just doesn't get touched on, right? So they don't necessarily need to know what happens as a consequence of all 4 of those things and the consequence of each of those possibilities. And they don't have to build an entire campaign module here. They just have to figure out kind of the general direction. They have a North Star of where they're going. And from there, the paths can diverge, right? Like, a good example is Triglavian minor victories, right? Triglavian minor victories in general. Nowadays, minor victories are fairly critical as far as like mechanically goes. It's the place that you can go to find Edencom and Triglavian sites in case space. The Divana filaments lead to random Triglavian minor victories. It's as such that if you looked at it, you could be like, oh, well, there always was going to be minor victories, so that way the Divana filaments would work that way, right? They need to have all these different systems. But here's the thing. Triglavian minor victories and minor victories in general were never intended to exist. Basically, when an invasion was completed by one side or the other, if it wasn't allowed to progress, then it just ended. It just stopped the invasion in that system, either side winning. And players interpreted that as it not working, that is, as a bug happening. Now, behind the scenes, the AI that was controlling the invasion, what it would do is it would feint. So it would, and by that I mean like a fake attack. So it would feint towards one system and try to and attack it, in order to lure the attention, so that way it could attack a system that it really wanted, and try to take it. So these feints existed, but players saw it as just it not working. So what CCP did was they added this concept of the minor victory, right? If the system comes under invasion and is completed, but cannot progress, rather than just go away, it now turned into a minor victory. Now, that decision was never in the original plan, but over time, they worked it in, right? So that way, when they didn't have all of the details of Pakvin designed by that point. They might have had an idea that was where they were going in that vague direction. Like they knew that there's going to be, they wanted to have the 27 systems, and that Pakvin would happen if they managed to do it, and all this sort of stuff. But the idea that there is a Divana filament, what could not have been in the design plans, because minor victories weren't in the design plan. So it's one of those things that they managed to work in later, and that's why I bring it up, which is that, you can, as time goes on, like by the next development cycle, they can have things that are in response to what happens in this development cycle, right? So like if you completely surprise them, they might not be able to react because, everything that we're seeing is stuff that was in the pipe for the last several months. But as far as like long term goes, did they need to know what's going to happen with Turner long term? No. They probably have an idea as to when, like, for instance, the Turner 1 people are going to show back up or something involving that. But, like, do they need to know exactly when the next time Turner 1 or Turner system is going to be important, or when the next step is going to be? Did they need to have that information in order to do what they did? Absolutely not. They just need to know that those consequences are acceptable consequences and let it play out. And so I think that this idea that this living universe, the fact that we do have an impact, this continual denial that it's real, and this attitude that it's illusionary, is just kind of frustrating, because there are people that are trying to enjoy this stuff. And more importantly, there are people who, after the fact, feel bad that they weren't able to participate because they didn't know about it or they didn't understand or whatever. While everybody else is loudly telling them that it isn't worth anything, right? So I think that over time, players are going to get more and more excited about it. I think that I personally believe that this month is going to be probably a good month for them to do the next faction campaign. The kind of people that would do the faction campaign are the kind of people that have made events happen in January in the past. January has no set event, and it also is a downtime because they have low production in December because it's Christmas. But if they already have something planned out, especially if it's something lore related, they can usually shoehorn it in. So I think it would be a good time to start up the next faction campaign, especially if the thing that it's working towards like leads to fruition by like March or April. So if within the next quarter we're going to get, I think that we're at least going to start hearing about the actual nature of the transmuters and the technology that we're going to get from it. Likely, as I've predicted before, I assume, and it seems pretty clear, that what we're going to get is these transmuters as an ability to modify nullsec space to change resources available, etc., etc. You know, customization of space. Now, how that leads into the next faction campaign and how all these things play out, I'm not 100% sure. But I think that, like, this current arc is more or less leading to that point. And then once that's over, they can transition to doing more of the, like, ramp up to the shooter. I do find it very interesting that FanFest is delayed until fall this year. I would have expected it to be in the spring, and I already expected the shooter to be announced at FanFest. Now I wonder whether or not it'll even be announced before it, and they'll just have, like, basically they'll announce it and tease some of the stuff about it, and then just show off, or like say that they'll do the full reveal of it at FanFest or whatever, just to start building up hype. But I think that, like, they've been doing a lot of stuff in the background when it comes to the story, but now they're doing more and more stuff that's designed to kind of get people's attention, to notice that things are actually happening, and they need to cross that threshold before they start getting into the nullsec stuff, right? Because, like, I mean, there's already going to be people that aren't going to notice that anything's happening until they get the actual report that says, hey, you know, if you want to get your thing, this is how you have to do it right now. And then act all surprised Pikachu and the Galente are at a severe disadvantage because of how we've been set up from the last two, or the last campaign, or, you know, something to that effect. I don't know. We'll have to see. I've been thinking the Turner people could possibly turn him again with the Mimitar take Turner. It's possible. Actually, that's a really good theory. I like that one. I'm holding out that the Turner guys are going to show up in Pokvin with no actual explanation. I gotta say, my wandering before the stream is doing better than the wandering during the stream. Wanted to ask, having read a chunk of lore, is Or the only faction that doesn't have some kind of bad blood on their hands? You think Or doesn't have bad blood on their hands? The Mordai Sancho call attack might have been ordered by Or CEO. Seems not that confirmed. So, are you talking about the Morty Sancho chemical attack against the Serpentis? Yeah, them turning... Well, yeah, them turning up in Pokvin would really correspond to, like, some of the things that the preacher said. Who are the Turner folks that y'all are talking about? I'll show it in just a second. Yes. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the short version of that story, okay? Yanni finds a giant hunk of spodmane in Cloudering, manages to hide it from the Galente Federation government long enough to be extracted and make his fortune. From this, he builds the Outer Ring excavations. He doesn't have a military, and so he hires Mordu's Legion to be a security guard. And eventually, he decides to retire and hand over the corporation to his friend, who then misuses the relationship between Mordu and Or, pissing off Mordu, and more importantly, pissing off the Serpentis, which causes the Serpentis to secretly perform a hostile takeover of Outer Ring excavation. So then, for about 10 years, Serpentis was the secret majority share of Outer Ring's excavation, and was using their research and development wing to advance their own processes. And then, lo and behold, Yanni shows back up, this time as the chairman of Upwell Consortium. And they announce all of their backers, including Intaki Bank and Mordu's Legion. Then several days later, announce that they have, in fact, repurchased or basically re-hostile takeovered it. Mordu blockaded all of the Serpentis structures, and they hired us to hunt down all of the Serpentis and destroy them and attempt to extract the data that they had. They then got the Serpentis. They then worked with the Deathless. I believe that Upwell just kind of put out a broad CD Underground request, but in the end, either way, the Deathless, through his agent Leopold, managed to get the FIO dossier, which contained the information about the Serpentis shipyards. He handed that over to Upwell, which Upwell used it to start attacking the shipyards. This was frowned upon by the empires, and so Upwell released the information to the public through the new Scope licensing agency, which was the beginning of the event tracker, which 1 year later was taken over by the Ostracon agency and turned into the agency we have today. So, yeah, sure. Or has no bad blood on them. Now then. Yes, that is the short version. I tried to keep things pretty well narrowed in, actually, on that one. I could have gone on several other trails. But yeah, I like to put things into context. Also, have you seen the length of any of my videos? Anyway, here we go. This is Turner 1. Oh God, all of my green screen here. Let's just. It's okay. All right. We'll just do that. It's fine.
The Turner system's star appears to have been destabilized beyond recovery by the activity of the prototype stellar transmuter placed in orbit by the Amar Empire. Stellar radiation emitted by the star has been fluctuating at ever shorter intervals, seemingly heading towards an imminent crescendo. Scientists raised the alarm upon calculating that the interval between radiation spikes has been decreasing in a linear manner, indicating that a terminal phase will be reached at around 1700 hours New Eden Standard on November 2nd. What exactly will happen during this posited terminal phase is debated, but the common consensus is that a major stellar event will take place. One leading theory is that a radiation burst and stellar mass ejection similar to that seen during the Salin incident of YC-111 will take place. While the output and scale of extreme stellar events can vary widely, any effects from such a catastrophe are expected to be significant across the system. On the orders of Captain Marshal Sirdan Zerkosh, the Amar Empire crew manning the stellar transmuter in Turner has been drawn down, and engineers are reported to be working on shutdown procedures. Orbiting closest to the star, the planet Turner 1 and the Republic station around it are believed to be at grave risk of catastrophic damage or destruction in the event of a stellar event of similar scale to the Salin incident. Despite offers to raise wages and give substantial hazard pay bonuses, planetary industry workers on Turner 1 have begun to evacuate from the planet. Thousands upon thousands of workers and their families are leaving, abandoning their equipment and leaving subsurface settlements empty of human life. Amar occupation forces have also long since left the planet, taking their own support workers and slaves with them. The only group willingly remaining behind are those nomadic descendants of the original Minmatar settlers of Turner 1. These nomad clans lived in isolation for generations before interstellar trade and planetary industry began to make their presence felt on the rocky desert world. The nomad clans have apparently been convinced current events are caused by intervening spiritual forces due to the teachings of a shamanic figure known as Tanuk Gufran, the Absolver. He preaches that the planet and wider system will be purged of the conflict introduced by industry and war, leading to a transformation of Turner 1. The bizarre teachings of the Absolver are taken seriously by Minmatar traditionalists as the ways of the clans of Turner 1. And combined with the Amar presence, this has stymied efforts to evacuate the sizable yet untallied nomad population. Republic Fleet Hetman General Kanth Filmer has hit out at the Amar Empire for its reckless ambition and monstrous negligence in deploying and operating the stellar transmuters. General Filmer also condemned the Amar for hindering evacuation of the population from the system. Amar Imperial forces have refused cooperation offers and flatly rejected efforts to broker a truce. The Empire's stance has made it impossible for the Republic fleet to mount a major evacuation operation. Nevertheless, flights of transport ships have infiltrated Turner and are struggling to move people from the Republic Parliament station above Turner 1 onto other stations further out in the system. The desperate hope of Minmatar rescuers is that a major stellar event will not doom the entire system in far-flung stations, and planets will provide at least some shelter from any cataclysm. Further complicating efforts to cleanly evacuate threatened populations in Turner is the presence of the Blood Raider Covenant and the Order of St. Tetramon. In the general celebration of their annual blood harvesting festival, the Blood Raiders have taken advantage of the increased chaos and conflict in the war zone to mount attacks on evacuation and military flights. The heretic hunters of the Order of St. Tetramon seek to oppose them, but as a notorious Amar military order, are hardly likely to be welcomed by the Minmatar colonists and fighters in the war-torn region. This is Alton Havery, reporting for The Scope.
All right, you guys didn't miss much. I just did a Caldari outpost that had nothing in it of any value. Here.
Deep concerns have arisen across New Eden following the Amar Empire's activation of prototype stellar transmuters in the Amar-occupied Minmatar systems of Turner, Vard, and Egmar. The constellations these systems belong to have also seen increased Amar Navy and Minmatar...
Never mind, this is the wrong one.
The details of the disaster following the blast from the Star of Turner on November 2nd are still emerging in its aftermath. Closest to the star was the Imperial prototype stellar transmuter understood to have destabilized the star through its experimental operations. A skeleton crew of Amar volunteers stayed aboard the transmuter, and attempts to avert catastrophe continued until the very last moments. As it became clear that all hope was lost and the terminal phase was imminent, Marshal Zirkosh addressed the transmuter crew, thanking them for their devotion and service to the Empire, before commending their souls to God. At 1700 hours, the Star of Turner entered its so-called terminal phase of instability, and the transmuter ceased to exist. The destruction of several capsuleer structures close to the star swiftly followed. Orbiting high above the barren planet of Turner 1 is the Republic Parliament Station, which has played a crucial role in the combined efforts of Empire and Capsuleer corporations to successfully evacuate the population of Turner 1. At the time of the terminal event, only a handful of crew remained aboard the station, maintaining docking and traffic operations to ensure that the maximum number of refugees could escape. Ahead of the blast, the station's spare shield generators and power had been diverted to reinforce the structure. Unfortunately, the hastily rigged enhancements did not deflect all radiation and supercharged particles, with many systems wrecked and secondary explosions and fires breaking out. Regardless, the shielding did save most of those who sheltered in the core of the station, which remained structurally sound despite the severe damage to peripheral superstructures. The worst effects by far were felt on the surface of Turner 1. As the planet closest to the star, it was clear that this barren world would be hit by any extreme energy burst, making its evacuation a top priority. Industry workers and many settlers were lifted off to safety, with only those refusing help remaining on the planet. Principal among those remaining behind were the nomadic Minmatar clans faithfully following the teachings of Tanakh Gufran, the Absolver. In a final bizarre broadcast from the surface of Turner 1, the Absolver encouraged his followers to embrace the spiritual forces about to transform the system. Turner 1 has been scorched beyond recognition by the effects of the intense radiation burst and bombardment by a wave of supercharged plasma from the star. So far, there are no known survivors from the surface of the planet. Despite many warnings as to the risks, a large number of Capsuleers placed their ships and crews at serious risk to witness what promised to be an extraordinary event.
I'd like to note that I did not put my crew at risk. I went in a frigate that doesn't require crew, so I don't appreciate the implication here, Scope.
Unsurprisingly,
We're not all monsters all the time.
these ships took heavy damage from the radiation burst, with shields and armor systems collapsing in seconds, leaving damaged hulls totally exposed. A number of ships were destroyed when rival Capsuleers exploited these moments of extreme vulnerability to wreak destruction on one another. The chaotic struggle in space added to the death toll of this already tragic day. It is now becoming apparent that the Turner system has been permanently affected by the extreme stellar event. The widespread destruction is almost superficial on an astronomical scale, with the local space-time environment being profoundly altered, leading to very high unstable wormhole activity. For its part, the Amar Empire has declared its stellar transmuter research program a success, despite the extraordinary demise of its Turner operations. Ominously, the Empire appears confident it has gathered all the data required to take their exploitation of the technology forward to the next stage of development. In the aftermath of the Turner tragedy, attention is turned to the stellar transmuters in Egmar and Vard, currently under the control of Minmatar forces. The urgent question remains whether the Republic is willing to continue experimental operations or attempt to shut them down. This is Alton Hovery, reporting for the Scope.
All right. That's who that is. The question is, based on events like Turner and the recent invasion of Taki and the formation of Pakvin, seems like Concord's power isn't at a formidable level, at least not now. Do you think that they could dissolve? I think that they want you to think that right now. I think that Concord is at its most perilous position it's been in since its existence, and I think it'll speak to what Concord's willing to do to preserve itself. You know, with Interbest falling apart, like that's another indication of the issue. Like Concord as the United Nations of EVE Online has effectively completely failed at this point. The only real responsibility that Concord maintains successfully at the moment is like the DED and the Capsuleer police forces, right? So the thing is that we know. So like the buildup is about the rogue AI and like the other and all that sort of stuff. So we have Derail operating in Igalis and elsewhere. I think that a disaster of that sort may bring things back into focus and allow Concord to kind of reassert control in the same way as they were able to with Edencom. Um, but yeah, the power of Concord over the empires is at an all-time low. Oh, sorry. Not sorry, but oops. Yeah, just like the real UN, exactly. Sad to say. Hey, actually getting things now. Oh my god, why is all of my green screen just failing? Concord wanted to preserve itself. Couldn't they just take control of everything? They have the most powerful hardware. No. They have powerful hardware against us. But they don't have, like, they explicitly do not have jurisdiction over any one empire. Their job is to keep the peace between the empires and to preserve the empires. That's their charter. I can go find the Concord Charter after this and we can read it again. I usually read it when I'm trying to convince people that Concord is the true enemy of all Empyreans.
Warp drive active.
The software is failing. Wait, what? The software is failing. Did I say something about software failing? I'm sorry. I just totally... Jurisdiction is text on a piece of paper. Hold on. Can I pull this up real quick? Well... Okay, everything's kind of going wrong all at once. Am I still here? I'm still here. Okay. That's odd. Yeah, can anyone still hear me? I don't even know. Okay, you can still hear me. Weird. So, like, I went to go look up the Kindle version of Templar 1 so that way I could, like, look up the description real quick. And they're like, the Kindle edition is not open or is not available. So I can't, like, apparently I can't even open up the copy that I have easily. And then on top of that, it just started, or my Eve client disconnected for kind of no good reason. Definitely not chill. All right, we're back though. Let me... I no longer know how I'm going to pull this up off the top of my head. So unless somebody tells me it's worth it, then I will. Then I won't. At any rate, it basically says that their job is to preserve the Dark Age empires and protect them from threats that originate from space, and to protect the people from the. Okay. Should I not be connected right now? Do you think CCP will ever do something as crazy as letting capsules temporarily sever Concord's power over them? If not, how close do you think we could get to something like that? I don't think that... So, like, the problem with severing Concord's power over them, like, putting aside Ashtarothi's RP crusade, it's not overly practical. So many of our systems, including how we clone, how we use Stargates, how we use local, all that kind of stuff, is perpetuated on the standards and practices that are maintained by Concord and affiliated organizations like the SCC. So, like, we would have to create our own backbone. Which, by the way, this is a fun fact. So here's a fun one that I figured out, I think. So, and I might have told you guys this before, but just in case, I'll say it again. I figured out why... man, that's making me nervous. I figured out why there's no local in Pockfin or Wormhole space. And it's not quite what you might think. What I used to believe is that wormholes were too cut off for you to communicate with local. That, like, you basically get a bad signal, right? But A, that doesn't overly explain blackout. B, that doesn't explain why you can clone. And C, it doesn't explain why you can still use local and see people once they've said something in local. Okay? So what we have is wormholes have no local, Pockfin has no local, and when the quantum entangled helium isotope 5, He5, stocks were low, they went into emergency power mode, which put local in delayed mode. So they had no local then. But you still have cloning, you still have the ability to talk in theory, you could still clone jump, etc. So what exactly is going on? Well, I could ask that about what's going on in the game too. On the Eve Universe portal, what? No. Okay, well, I'm not answering that then. Nope. It's not space. Nope. Because think about it. So quantum entangled helium helium isotope 5 should be able to communicate regardless of distance. That's the whole point. It's quantumly entangled. So, in this scientific article on Stargate technology, we read, when a vehicle requests jump clearance, the source node transmits a basic carrier signal that includes data on the class of the vessel, its mass, its current status, and its CISC Concord identification serial code to the destination node, which then confirms receipt of the data. This entire process is automated, consisting of direct communication between the mainframes of the paired stargates. The gates then confirm alignment to each other before activating their retaining magnetic fields. Once this process is confirmed by both source and destination nodes, they simultaneously fire a focused beam of gravitons towards each other, folding space-time consistent with Wells tensor dynamics, which creates a temporal singularity, or more simply, a Terran space-time. At both the source and destination nodes, these two nodes monitor these singularities at intervals of 1 picosecond, ensuring that they're stable before the source gate begins streaming negatively charged gravitons towards the destination, which in turn acts as a receiver, positively charged. This causes the node to effectively reach for each other. Their retaining magnetic fields preventing external gravitational distortion and focusing it on the two rifts as the wormhole begins to form, causing a tentacle-like structure reaching from source to destination, blah, 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 blah. So the big key here is this statement at the very beginning. Once this process is confirmed by both the source and destination nodes, they simultaneously fire a focused beam of gravitons towards each other, folding space-time consistent with blah, 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 right? Sorry, not once this process is confirmed. This part right here. When a vessel requests jump clearance, the source node transmits basic carrier signal that includes data on the class of vessel, its mass, its current status, and its CISC. So this is how local works. This is why you see local, because because Concord identifies every single person as they're jumping in, right? So if there's no Stargate, it isn't that you can't detect who's around you. It's that they don't know who's entered. There's no place, there's no local tracker system that will be able to relay with your computer system to let you know what else is operating within the system. You've either connected via wormhole or through a Pochfin gate, neither of which uses the Concord rules. And therefore, when you're in those systems, you have no local, except your ship defaults into its own local where you can still communicate, because that's how you communicate with the fluid router in the first place. But basically, you create your own little network internally, so that way you can broadcast out and you can see other people's broadcasts. And once you've seen other people's broadcasts, you pick up their signal, and that's how you can know who's in local once they start talking. Yes, I'm back in game. So that's how local works. So why did the blackout cause local to disappear? Well, that's simple too. They were on emergency mode. Cloning is still an essential service. All these other things are essential service, but all of the communication that's required to keep track of who it is exactly and all that kind of stuff, that's all extra data. And the problem with quantumly tangled helium isotope 5 is that every bit that you send is effectively another particle of it that you have to consume. It gets used up. It has to be brought back into its superfluid state in order for it to function as a quantum entangled thing. By the way, this is real science, for the record. That part is real science. But so it isn't that they're not sending any data at that point. It's that they have severely restricted the amount of data that is being operated through the fluid router. And thus, once again, your ship defaults to local backup systems. Trying to find And I Shall Hide. If you go to my Notion, to the lore portal, and you go to Lost Chronicle, if you go to the lore section, there should be a section on Lost Chronicles. Because I'm pretty sure we had to Wayback Machine it in order to get it again. Yeah, the aderon.org/lore. That's actually one of the episodes that I want to do sooner rather than later, is like talking about the science of EVE Online. Because there is a ton of... We're going to go with good sci-fi, if not good science. Like, there's a couple of things that it seems like CCP is basing their physics off of more pop sci than, like, cutting-edge physics. But beyond that, they actually, like, most of this gobbledygook is real. Stop it. No. Some real FOMO from what I'm missing out on, just saying. Yeah. Well, like, so for example, there is the transmuters themselves, right? The transmuters, the shield is the thing that looks like a solar panel is actually a 0-point condenser. And of course, they use 0-point condensate in their stuff. So, the thing is that 0-point energy is a real thing, and 0-point condensate is a real thing, and really has to do with wormholes specifically. So it's an interesting... That's an interesting piece of information. And a lot of the stuff with gravitons, and like even the stuff that I just read with the Stargate, and FTL communication. The FTL, there's the scientific article on FTL is so like scientifically accurate that reading it is actually like hard to do because it reads like almost like a real scientific paper. Let me check out this place and then I'll see. It would be fun if this explanation meant filaments give you a small window to not show up in local. That's a really good point, Joe. That's a really, really good point. But the issue is that your ship likely automatically registers with the local Stargate network as soon as you land. Like you could explain it away like that. Like the Stargates that are offline in Pokvin don't count, and the Stargates that were on low power mode weren't running those functions. Therefore, whatever. But if you jump into a system with fully functioning Stargates, very likely your system automatically registers yourself with the local network. That's a good one. You can't transmit information via entanglement? What do you mean? Oh, the FTL communication one? Because, yeah, entanglement is used, but that's only part of the puzzle. Look, I'll read some of it when I get done with this hack. Oh. Oh, painful. Whatever.
Warp drive active.
There we go. All right. Oh yeah, speaking of local, I've got no local right now. Sweet. Even better. All right. Faster than light communication. After mastering the technique of wormhole creation, it was thought that a distance had finally been conquered, but despite of this, communication still needed to be transmitted at the speed of light, and though wormholes did shorten distance between distant regions, interactive communication remained impossible. This problem was quickly identified as being one of the most important handicaps remaining in the conquest of deep space. The Amarians were the first to master jump gate technology and thus the first to face the problem. They launched massive state-funded research and tried several radical solutions, but without success. In the end, they stopped all research, accepting the fact that FTL communication was untenable. Centuries later, the Galanteans and Caldari faced the same problems following the creation of the Sodio Urabata drive. The drive allowed FTL travel within the system. The Galanteans and Caldari lived in, and communications with ships using the drive were naturally impossible with conventional communication devices. To stimulate research in solving this, both the Galanteans and the Caldari promised huge rewards for anybody who could come up with some solution to the problem, which led to one of the most frantic goose hunts in the history of science. Like the Amarians before them, many solutions were tried out, but none with success. Finally, it was a young Galantean woman, Lee Asbel, who came out with a solution that was so simple, yet deeply rooted in arcane physics, that at first it was rejected as a hoax. It wasn't until the famous Asbel-Wurthrich experiment that the functionality was demonstrated with success. Industrialization quickly followed, leading to one of the greatest stock market surges ever as thousands of companies extended their reach into the whole known universe. The roots of this solution lay in an ancient paradox, often called the EPR paradox. The name is shrouded in mystery. The EPR paradox is famous for contradicting quantum physics in some very important ways. Specifically, it shows how old physics theory, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, to be untrue. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle, believed to be named after a place or person, affirms that the exact state of a quantum particle cannot be determined with full accuracy, no matter how refined the measurement equipment is. The classical example being the measurement of the velocity and position of a free particle. To be able to measure the position of a particle, you must be able to see it. This means that you have to illuminate it at least with one photon. But the collision between the photon and the particle changes the velocity of the particle, thus making it impossible to determine what the velocity was before the position was measured. The EPR paradox describes the possibility of creating a pair of particles whose quantum state was entangled in such a way as to be a mirror to each other. For example, a pair of particles with a positive and negative velocity given as xo by v and xo by negative v, i.e. a pair of particles that at given time are at the same position but of exactly opposite velocity vectors. After some time, the two particles would be separated by a large distance, and measurement could be done on them independently. Now, by measuring, say, the position of particle A and the velocity of particle B, the EPR paradox states that you would thus have determined the exact state of both particles, thus violating Heisenberg's relationship. But later experiments confirmed that Heisenberg's principle, thus making the EPR paradox void, to their surprise of many. Mathematically, this didn't cause any problems, as the collapse of the wave function due to measurements was an instantaneous happening. From a physical point of view, this was more difficult to comprehend, as it seems to imply that one state change propagated instantly between the two particles. This was immediately suggested as a way to create faster-than-light communication. By making a measurement on a particle, it would lead to an instantaneous change in the remote particle state, thus transmitting one bit of information. A detailed mathematical analysis of the scenario, though, showed that due to statistical nature of quantum particle, only noise would be transmitted, thus laying to rest those speculations for millenniums. This is precisely where Asbel took up the problem, with a rare insight leading to a breakthrough. She argued that even though the output of the transmission was pure noise, the structure of that noise could be used to encode the information. Indeed, it was well known that the bifurcation cascade leading to purely chaotic time series had a universal structure governed by the Feigenbaum constant. Taking a parametric family of functions called logistic maps, defined by the interval O by 1, there existed a parameter and an initial condition of the map that could be generated any arbitrary random sequence of a number. Asbel considered the problem from the other side, i.e., given a finite chaotic sequence, how could you trace yourself back to the initial condition? By using a maximum entropy analysis on the Shannon information entropy of the signal, she devised a way to solve the inverse problem. Furthermore, She demonstrated that by carefully modulating the measurements of tangled quantum states, basically willfully introducing noise into the measurement process itself, that specific noise structures could be carried across to the measurements of the other particle. The process was thus the following. A byte of information is mapped onto the initial condition of the logic map leading to the chaotic attractor. This noisy sequence is then used to modulate the measurements done in a sequence of entangled particles. At the same time, on the other side, measurements are made on the particles, and a noise sequence is extracted. Maximum entropy analysis is then done to determine the initial conditions from which this series had been generated, and thus map it back to a given byte of information. Note that in this case, the noisy sequence sent is totally uncorrelated with the one measured. What they do have in common is to be from the same chaotic attractor, and that is the information that actually gets transmitted instantly, regardless of distance. The result is that of that rush, as stated before, this theoretical result was originally considered too incredible to be true. The Asbel-Wurthrich experiment used a very similar setup as the ancient aspect experiment, and it had a historical moment when the first smiley was sent over the channel. Following that, a great gold rush started on who could be the first to industrialize this. So if anybody asks you, what was the first message to be sent through faster light travel? The answer is the smiley emoji. The result of that rush is the familiar fluid router, which forms the building blocks of universal communication as we know it today. Ignoring the mathematical intricacies, the architecture of these routers is deceptively simple. The first step is their manufacturing is the creation of the entangled quantum states. This is done by using superfluid 4 helium, which is essentially all of the helium atoms are entangled to a single quantum state due to the Bose condensation. A droplet of such liquid 4 helium is then carefully separated into two. From this point, the two droplets, and more specifically the helium atoms in these droplets, are intrinsically entangled. Each droplet that is then placed into a separate router box that contain necessary mechanism to encode and decode byte stream into quantum state measurements performed on the atoms of the droplet. From that point on, these two routers are linked together, regardless of their separation. Thus, a spaceship will usually buy a router pair from a network provider. One box will be placed in the spaceship, while another one is kept in a network provider's backbone that will have connections to other routers, thus effectively forming a decentralized network where messages can be routed across many routers and to many providers. This architecture is similar to the ancient internet. The only limitations of communication system is the capacity of the channel. Indeed, the manufacturing of entangled 4 helium superfluid is an expensive process. Furthermore, a large number of atoms are used for each byte, as a statistically relevant chaotic sequence needs to be created. The sequence introducing a limit to the bandwidth, allowing only the transmission of X bytes per second. The amount of data sent then depletes a pool of available entangled atoms, thus limiting the total amount of data that can be sent within a given router pair. The FTL communication services have spread to every corner of the world of Eve since they first appeared a couple of centuries ago. The services and routers, albeit owned and run by independent companies, are under constant scrutiny and regulations by Concord's subcommittee to enforce both security and privacy in the communications channels, and to make sure that companies are correctly rendering the services they claim. The fierce competition on the telecommunication markets make it cheap, efficient, and reliable to talk, transfer data, and even conduct business for people light years apart. There you go. One cannot simply look at an entangled particle without unentangling it. So the way it works is that helium isotope 5 or 4 QE or He4 has this interesting behavior that if you supercool it, it becomes a superfluid, which means all of its atoms are locked in the same quantum state. That's why they use helium isotope 5 to do the fluid router, because it is even in our modern day known to be probably the most likely way for us to be able to relatively consistently produce quantumly entangled particles.
Warp drive active.
This would be an interesting application of the result of transmuter research, delay local. Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, what if you can make the or rats or whatever in your system better, but it also knocks out local? What if you can make the sites better and worth more, but it increases the number of incoming connections like Turner does? The question then becomes, what kind of trade-offs are people going to be willing to have?
Warp drive active.
If you want to send emojis, you must first entangle in quantum physics. Yeah. In order to send an emoji, you must first create an entire communications backbone. I like that a lot more than Hello World, right? Like, I want my first message on any project to be a smiley face. That feels way better.
Warp drive active.
I keep looking at local and seeing not even myself. And, like, I have that Millhouse, heh, I'm in danger. Nothing good. 2 splices. Come on. Nothing good. I want to talk about the fact that you can get Amarian Starship Engineering data cores in these Caldari sites. All right, I think it was this one was the good one. Nope. Yeah. Especially Amarian research information in a Caldari site, right? The window with all the text is still open. Shh. I is good YouTuber. You son of a gun. Well, six encoder splices so far. That's pretty good. I believe these encoder splices go for 20 million each. So, if that's still true, then that means I've got 120 million so far. Which I already put up 160 million-ish worth of stuff from earlier today. So, kind of neat. You can loot multiple cans in this site by kiting the rats off if you hack fast enough. Yeah, I tried that once. I learned that they shoot a lot further than I would like them to, and also are more accurate than I would like them to be.
Warp drive active.
Although I should probably be wrapping things up pretty soon. Yeah, let's just go ahead and head back to Hade. Call it good. Yeah, I'm not connected to the chat network right now. I'm invisible. Yeah. Well, so what I want to do is bring people with me. So that way we can like simultaneously hack 2 cans, get the loot and get away. Or just bring the Proteus and then hack all 4 cans and just fight the rats. But tomorrow, unless somebody has a better idea, I kind of want to go into my advice for newer players starting now. That's what I thought of as a topic. I've also been meaning to do something where we break down industry. There's also the science one. Maybe I should put up a poll to the members. I don't know. Feel free to try to sway my opinion right now. I feel like I want to do a series to follow up that one that I made. That's a good topic. Which one? My advice one? Because yeah, the idea is that like I want to make a series that starts with the one that we did on Tuesday, and then kind of follows up and goes over all of the basics. Yeah, you know, what should you know? What should you be using? What can you be doing? All those kinds of questions. Maybe I should just brainstorm all the questions I can think of that I see, or maybe even write down ones from the English Help channel for a while.
Warp drive active.
But I also wouldn't be surprised if we had something else to talk about tomorrow. So I guess we'll just play it by ear. Because, you know, it's the first Friday since they've been back. So we haven't really heard very much from them. Like, we don't even know what, if anything, is happening this month. We really don't know what's happening at all. We know that the faction campaign is soon. We know that with the faction campaign, we'll learn more about the technology that they've been researching. We know the Guardians Gala is coming up in February. I think also with how player event focused the storyline arcs are moving, video going to over where to look for those and how to get involved might be neat. That's the problem with that. And this is the thing that always gets me, is that people ask, like, how do I get involved? And the problem is that these are things that are happening. So, like, I can give general advice, like follow CCP's stream and check out the role-playing Discord. But, like, by the time I can tell people what's going on, it's already happened most of the time. That's why with the Transmuters and the faction event, I was so big on that, because I was like, for the first time in the history of EVE, I was able to be like, if you want to make sure that you impact the story somehow, go capture the systems of Vard, Egmar, or Turner on behalf of the Mimitar. And lo and behold, it did. It modified the way the story played out. So, you know, the people that took place in that can say that they rescued Egmar and Vard. I think that that's critical. But the problem is that I don't get that much of a warning ahead of time most of the time. Now, the next campaign is going to be started. I can tell you that Conid has been poking around in Iridia, working with Lydai around some blue stars in an extremely suspicious way. And, you know, the state has pretty much finished their occupation of the Syndicate area constellation. And everybody, both Caldari, Galente, and the smugglers are focusing more and more on the Pegler constellation. Which, let me tell you, you want to know the best sign that we're going to hear about the shooter soon? When Pegler becomes a thing, when Egmar becomes the thing that we're focusing on, when that story explodes, you know we are on the path to the shooter. I almost guarantee it. But how to figure out what's important info and what's less immediately relevant. That's the problem, Yellow, is that, like, my answer for that is just watch my analysis of the world news as it comes out, because, like, every single thing that's listed, like every detail, every name, like, not every, but like a lot of them ends up being something. There's a reason why these posts are there, whether it's future or past or, you know, just sideline stuff. But, like, how can I explain to you a methodology to know how to do it? I'm playing it by ear over here. Like, how do I instruct people how to read the tea leaves? A guide to Hobo Leaks might be a better one, but I'd like to do that on a day that there's, like, a lot to talk about there. But yeah, the big thing is watch the world news. And the biggest thing is honestly being willing to get involved, right? Everybody knew that Turner was going to happen a week ahead of time. Not everybody showed up. People that do, like, I know that there are some people that were disappointed because apparently, I guess they expected, like, the patch notes to appear in the sky or something like that. But there are a lot of people that I still hear from today that, like, are super pleased that they were able to be at Turner, that they were able to experience it, even if we don't fully understand the implications of what we experienced. Yeah, Hobo Leaks is important, or, like, going over Hobo Leaks might be interesting because, like, I feel like I don't explain enough because I'm also a software developer. So, like, I see it and I understand what it's actually trying to say. I don't know whether or not that's actually been explained to a lot of people yet. Like, how Hobo Leaks gets its records, what it becomes, why they appear the way they do, how CCP tries to sneak things in, etc., etc. I think that would be a good discussion. The problem is that we often see things being added to Hobo Leaks, and people will see it out of context, and there'll be somebody posting about it on Reddit who have no idea what the hell they're talking about, right? A good example is like one of the things that they like to do is rather than create an entirely new ship or, like Rat or an entirely new site or an entirely new thing, they usually take a template or they take a previously existent one and they clone it and then they make any of the modifications that they need. The good example of this is the Triglavian Dreadnought from the Dread sites. Literally, all they did was they took a Blood Raider Dreadnought from the Sodios, they copied it, and they changed the stats to make it into the Zernitra. In fact, if you go and look at the Zernitra from the fight, if you look at its actual stats in like Eve Chucker or one of those things that uses the API to look at stats, not just the in-game ones, you'll see that it has the Blood Raider power of being able to use the NOS even when it has more cap, which is not supposed to be allowed, but is... If you guys could just go ahead and move on out, that'd be amazing.
Warp drive active.
Oh yeah, I can't check who they are now because I have no local. So, at any rate, my point is that often things will appear on HoboLeaks and people will read into it further than they probably should.
Warp drive active.
Pochvin has completely died since the OF nerf. CCP going boots first. I mean, I hear both ways. Pochvin has always been dead, and yet there's a lot of activity there. There's things going on. I know that the main effort, like I am in full support of the Kybernauts' efforts. Here's something to think about, okay? I guess maybe this will be my final thoughts for you guys. All right? I want to share with you guys the work. Well, that's an incredibly unfortunate time to have that happen. What is going on? Is anybody else having connection problems to Eve? I never get DC'd like that.
Connecting.
Okay.
Docking request accepted.
Skill plan service is currently unavailable. Unable to retrieve skill plans. I'm barely holding things together. That's all right, because we made it home. So, what I want to share with you is the words of Seriatim Foucault. And then we'll talk about it for a second.
Potential. The worlds as the convocation
Only added more pain to those grieving on this somber occasion.
Citizens of New Eden, Subornist Kybernauts, I am Seriatim Foucault, Sub-Commander of the Internal Triglavian Revolutionary Organization. I speak to you with the consent of the Convocation of Triglav outside the struggle. It has been one standard year since the realization of totality by the Triglavian Collective and their Kybernaut allies. On the first day of totality, the weaving of Pochvin began, and this great work of stabilization continues even now.
Okay, so the creation of Pochvin was known as the weaving of Pochvin. And what they are doing now is the stabilization of Pochvin. Okay? This has been said multiple times. It implies that there is more going on within the systems as time goes on to get it ready for the anchorages to turn on eventually. Okay? So here is the theory. Here's the conspiracy theory. What is the stabilization that is required within Pochvin? What is it that began on the formation of totality and continues to this day? The answer, my dear viewers, is there are structures left in Pochvin. Pochvin abhors structures. It does not allow you to anchor them. The only stations are controlled by the Triglavians. I think that the player structures and the influence that they have are causing Pochvin to not progress, and that Pochvin cannot become stable until it reaches its final equilibrium of no more structures left in Pochvin. So if you want to help, the Kybernauts have been on a massive campaign to bring us closer to that realization. And on that note, my friends, I think I will say, I've been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put Eve into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you guys so much for checking out the stream. Thank you for this kind of chill day. It's been cool to hang out with you guys. I do want to give my thanks to Abyssus, Zuchan, Arydanika the Queen, BlackRoseNoble, Dajat Lemmont, Drake, Golden Age Stories, J. Kuhn, LM1, Malik Starfire, MidnightSpaceMonkey, NotJustFun, Seedsaplenty, Serenalen with no eyes, Syliana Vel'ash, Nephilim, Grendel, Zaul Nex, and of course, the Immortal patrons Ebo1337 and Rid. Thank you guys so much. It's been a blast. Tomorrow, we'll be back, I assume, knock on wood. And I plan on having like an actual thing to present to you guys. But feel free to reach out if there's anything, especially if you're members, members and patrons and all that stuff can always suggest things, all that sort of stuff. Oh, sorry. Before I leave, one last thing. I meant to say this before I went to the bathroom, and then I said I was going to say it when I got back, but then I didn't, which is this. So, like, this is so evil. So, like, I was thinking about this, and when I'm doing, like, a stream, sometimes I forget the text, or, like, I leave a window open, or I don't show the window, or something's muted, and you got to get my attention. Well, the problem is that text is going by all the time. It doesn't get my attention. But, it does get my attention? Super chats. So, like, if you, like, it alerts me in a totally different way. So if you really, 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 really need to get my attention, that's probably the best way in the moment to do so. And I'm definitely not monetizing my lack of attention. Oh, I love you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine. every city.